Hello everyone and welcome back to Aman Talks NRL SuperCoach here for the round 19 trade targets and preview stream. We're into the final mini buy round. We've passed all of the major buy rounds and now we're looking really to the run home. We still have State of Origin Game 3 tomorrow night to navigate. Despite my maroon jumper, I am not a Maroons fan. I actually feel a bit gross that I'm wearing this, but it's the warmest hoodie I have. So just bear with me, anyone who's thinking I'm not wanting to represent the Blues colours. I definitely am, and I will tomorrow. It's just freezing in Sydney, and this is my warmest hoodie. So don't get your pitchforks out of me just wanting to stay a bit warmer. But good to see so many of you already in the chat. As always, Sam, Troy, Nick, Jason, there's nothing better than starting my birthday week off with an Aman stream. Thank you for that. And mate, happy birthday in advance. Wooden Spoon SC, that sounds like my season sometimes. Lachlan Camarelli, Martin Lau, Michael Bryers. Great to see so many familiar names in the chat. And of course, we're going to talk a lot about run home options. Who are the best players to pick in pretty much all the positions we'll be going through today, except maybe front row may not be getting as much of a feature, but we'll talk about all the other positions. But we obviously need to caveat with State of Origin Game 3 tomorrow. Still things could happen. If it's anything like Game 3 last year, which was so intense and was one of the best games I've ever watched, there could be some more injuries and stuff out of that. We just don't know yet. So we still need to caveat a lot of what we say tonight with State of Origin Game 3 still to come. But still plenty to get our teeth stuck into. Some still big questions to answer as well for the run home. So let's get cracking into it, shall we? So just taking a look at my score and rank, 1,042 was what I scored last week, which was good. This was actually my first green arrow in a major buy round this year. So season rank is 2,226. So it's getting up there, which is good. I think the end goal is still to try to get to the top 1,000. Teams are going to start looking pretty similar as well with who players are bringing in. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that, which is really why I think trades and captaincy really feel like the biggest things, where if you can hold trades for, to cover big injuries or to make massive luxury pod moves in the future, and then nailing the right captaincy, that really to me feels like how you're going to be getting ahead for the final part of the season, but we'll all have fun doing that as well. So another thing to get excited about for the run home is the SC Ballr's Run Home Challenge. So very excited to announce that I have partnered with Ballr's for the rest of the season. Obviously, if you haven't seen any of the Ballr stuff or been aware of whatever they do, they've recently launched this year a new website, which is awesome for in-game score tracking. It's the fastest thing out there. It's ridiculous. So I use that nowadays at all times for tracking live scores. They've also released new tools as well for points projections and new stats tables and things like that as well. So it includes things like base power, which is stuff that I love to see. 3-5 round averages, ownership, all really, really useful stats, all on the Ballr website. And in terms of the run home challenge, it's really, really good for anyone. Like, I think my season's going okay. What am I, 2,226? But if you're someone who really feels like your season's like falling apart, you've got the run home challenge to look forward to from Ballr. Completely free to enter. You just need to have a login on their page. There's going to be up to $7,000 in cash prizes, which I believe they've told me goes all the way down to 10th. So even if you're in the top 10, you're still a chance of getting prizes here. The winner, I believe, is $3,000. So obviously very, very big amount on the line there. And it's good for anyone who feels like, if you're not going to get a running for the higher end of SuperCoach, you can just enter this league and use this as the way to keep motivated and do well for the rest of the season. So you just need to head to ballr.live, and that's BALLR.live to join the challenge. It's pretty easy to join, and there's really no frills. From doing that, you do get a league code, which you can then join. So highly recommend it. I signed up to it straight away. It was super easy as well. So really keen to partner with them. And they've done some awesome stuff with the tools that they've got on that website. And of course, you would have seen the watch along I did with them a few weeks back as well. So we're going to try to do more of them as well. We had a lot of fun doing that. It's just about trying to find the right games to really nail down the perfect watch alongs. So very keen to do more of those with the Ballr boys. But definitely does add some more exciting aspect to the run home, especially with the prizes that they've got on offer. So definitely would highly recommend you signing up for that. So just wanted to quickly also get into TLT for round 19. Obviously, we still have 3 major teams on the buy round. Actually, before I can get into this, I have to address some of these comments in the chat because they've all taken note of my color of my hoodie. What is Holden says, why are you wearing it? Burn it. Michael says, thought it was a Manly jersey. Martin saying, oh, you surpassed my rank. Got another red arrow. Yeah, green arrows is good. Dane says, you're so handsome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, even that's me wearing the Maroons jersey. I would have thought me wearing this jersey, not jersey. It's definitely not a jersey. It's a hoodie. I can tell you now, it's a hoodie that says Harvard. Okay, that's much better than surely no Queenslander in history has gone to Harvard, right? There's no way. They only allow people with one head. Sorry, low hanging fruit. Just had to say it. Look, it is Origin Game 3 decided tomorrow. I have to get my jokes in now while I can. But yeah, hoping for a Blues win. So yeah, no, it's definitely not a Maroons jersey. It's a Harvard hoodie. Very, very warm, very comfortable. So yeah, got to get my pot shots in. Apologies to any Queenslander fans who have just watched me have taken offense to that. That's okay. Sorry. You know what? It's the time of year. I've got to be putting in these jokes. Anyway, so let's take a quick look at TLT round 19. Not much change for the Sharks. For the Dolphins, Hamiso's still been named to back up. Sean O'Sullivan's coming in at 5'8" for Cody Nikorima. And I think O'Sullivan's he's been a very, very solid player for them in the past. So I don't really think, it's a drop off from Nikorima because he's been playing really well. But I think O'Sullivan's still going to be really, really solid for them. So I think the Dolphins are still going to be fine, even with Nikorima out for these few weeks. For the Knights, obviously it looks like Kalen Ponga's season is over. So Fletcher Hunt is going to be at fullback, and with no Fletcher Sharp as well in sight, he's likely going to keep that jersey for a while. And Greg Marzi's also been named on the wing. Pappenhausen has been named for the Storm, so that's a very, very good sign. Kane Bradley is out of the squad. They've got someone whose names I can't pronounce on the wing. So Kane Bradley has 100% met the definition of a one-and-done nuff. He's just nuffed out in our teams. Harry Grant and Cameron Munster have been named in the reserves. So they're a chance of backing up, but I think the fact that they've been named on the reserves, it makes me think that they're probably more likely to not play this week. So that's obviously very, very relevant for people looking at hooker or people like myself who own Cam Munster. Val Holmes has been named to back up for the Dragons, and their team looks a little bit better with Hamish Stewart and Leilua back as well. Roosters, lots of changes happening here. So Sam Walker is back. Sandon Smith has dropped out of the squad completely, so he's not even on the bench. Now, I actually generally think that this is better than him playing on the bench and playing limited minutes and really hemorrhaging cash. The fact that he's out of the squad, it means that his price won't move. So honestly, not maybe the worst outcome, but yes, he's probably going to be a sell. Mark Nwangani Tawasi is named on the wing, which is awesome because the Roosters love their right wingers. And all the Roosters Origin players have been named to back up. So Angus, Spencer Leniu, Rob Toyer, etc. Billy Smith has been named. Someone did point out to me that the 18th man for the Roosters, apologies, I can't remember off the top of my head, potentially is a chance of maybe filling in for him. So hopefully, the Roosters play, I think, the third game of the round. So not super late into the game, or into the round, I should say. So hopefully with Billy Smith, you can see, if you're still holding on to him and need his number this week, maybe you can see what happens with final team lists, although he's definitely someone that you can look to move on. In terms of my own team, I actually sold Billy Smith last week. I was all aboard selling Osaka or even Tino, but then when this thing of Billy Smith came out, I changed my trades where instead of selling Tino, I sold Billy Smith and I nuffed out Hubner. So it meant I used an extra trade, but it also meant I got rid of lower use players, I guess, compared to say a Tino, who might come good. So that's also a benefit of being in the Patreon. When I obviously can't just make a video every time I make trades, so I keep everyone updated in there. The Cowboys, all their Origin players have been named to play, which is good, given that they've got a pretty tough matchup against the Bulldogs, but they are at home. On the Bulldogs, their Origin players have also been named to back up. It's also meant that Matt Burton's moved back to 5'8", and Galvin back to the bench. I think that's good for someone like a Kickout. I think having Burton back at 5'8" is really going to help Kickout out as well this week. For the Warriors, we've got Tane Tuapiki at fullback. DWZ had a very, very early return from his leg issue, so he's back. And Tanner Boyd is the halfback. So there's obviously a bit of speculation about whether it's going to be Tanner Boyd or Tamara Martin. Tanner Boyd has won that jersey, and so might be a bit of a cheeky downgrade at 5'8" for anyone looking at him. Because he might also, I don't know if he'll get the goal kicking. Adam Pompey's been goal kicking for the Warriors, but Tanner Boyd generally has been kicking goals like he did for the Titans. If he's goal kicking, and we know the Warriors have got a very soft run home, he honestly is not a terrible exit point from anyone maybe looking at King Tongia, for example, if they're looking to move off of him. You've got Jerome Luai named to back up, and you've got Api Coruscant returning for the West Tigers. For the Eels, you've got Lomax named to back up, which is good for anyone looking to bring him in this week. And Talon De Silva's named on the bench as well for his Eels debut. All the Panthers origin players have been named in the reserves. So I think that they're going to be a tricky one because I'm just going to quickly check here. I have a feeling that they play one of the later games in the round. What do they play? They play the second last game of the round. So you're really not going to know with a lot of these... sorry, what have I done there? You're really not going to know with a lot of these Penrith players. What's going on there? Let me get rid of that. Anyway, sorry, had some screen issues on OBS. But yeah, with Penrith players, it's just going to be difficult to know whether they're all going to back up, especially the origin ones. And they play the second last game of the round. So it's going to be a bit tricky with trades. Obviously, Cleary is probably the big one. So again, that also reiterates it's a good week to be flexible with your team and really set your team up smartly where guys who are playing early in the round, have them in your starting lineup, and guys in the back end of the round, keep them in the reserves if you can, because we're probably going to need to be flexible, just getting news throughout the week post-origin. For the Titans, you've got Tino named at 13. So this is a bit encouraging because if you remember after game 2 in round 16, he was named on the bench. The fact that he's been named to start while backing up does look good. You've got Jaden Campbell back as well. Dave Fafita is also back on the bench. So look, not an option at the moment for me in second row, but could be someone to keep an eye out for. Jalen de Groot on the wing and Brimson still at fullback. So they've kept Brimson there for fullback. For the time being, Keanu Kinney looks like he could be there in round 21 though. So who knows what's going to happen with that back line. And then for the Broncos, you've got all the origin players named to back up in Carrigan, Haas and Chibasaki. And Ben Hunt also returns. So fair few things that are relevant for Supercoach. I think for me, the biggest things were really with the Roosters and the Storm, having Munster and Grant in the reserves, Sandon dropping out of the squad, and I guess also even the Penrith players to an extent as well. So, yeah, Supergun, I appreciate that comment, which was still styling from the neck up though. Yeah, ignore the neck down and this maroons color. Yeah, I'm still a Blues fan. And let me get facts straight because I see some people speculating in the chat. I did not attend Harvard, so I'm a bit of a cop out. I visited Harvard and I bought the hoodie because I liked the logo and honestly I tried the hoodie and I was like, this is so warm. So I bought the hoodie, but I cannot admit to saying that I studied at Harvard. I'm not smart enough for that. Martin Lau, $20 donation. Thank you so much. Tip for game 3, over under 13, and your tips for this week, split the money again. Yeah, let's go. Fine, let's go early on that. I'm gonna have to quickly bring up the games happening this week. Sharks Finns. I'm actually gonna give the Sharks. I feel like they need to turn it around. Knights Storm. I'll give it to the Storm. Dragons Roosters. Cowboys Dogs. The fact that Galvin's not starting, I think I'm going to give it to the Dogs, and they also need to turn things around a bit. Warriors Tigers. I'll give that to the Warriors. Eels Panthers. It's a hard one. If the Panthers origin players don't back up, I actually don't mind the Eels, but I think I'll take Penrith. And then Titans Broncos, I'll take the Broncos. And then, yeah, of course, I'm taking New South Wales for sure. And well, I don't know if you're asking for like over or under. If you're asking for over under 13 in terms of margin, I go under 13. I think it's a decider. I wouldn't necessarily expect a blowout. But yeah, hopefully the Blues do the job. Alrighty, let's get into the trade topics. So I think the first thing I wanted to do quickly before getting into that was looking at the run home draw wise, just to keep in our minds who are the teams that are worth targeting, who've got the better draws and who hasn't. So what I've got on screen here, this is the run home draw for all the teams for the next 4 weeks. And this is using my draw sorting spreadsheet. So I've just yesterday changed the ratings for teams based on current form, Supercoach points conceded and whatnot. So what you're seeing over the next 4 weeks is the top 5 teams being Penrith, Bulldogs, Broncos, Warriors, and the Sharks. So Penrith looks super juicy with Parramatta, Rabbitohs, Tigers, and Titans. If you threw in the Cowboys, it's almost the perfect, I think, stretch of games that you could possibly have. Bulldogs with Cowboys, Dragons, Manly, and Tigers looks very good. The Broncos do have a bye in round 20, but outside of that, Titans, Parramatta, and Souths does look very appealing. Warriors, West Tigers, Knights, Titans, and Dolphins looks very good. And then for the Sharks, we've got the Dolphins, Roosters, Rabbitohs, and Cowboys. So next 2 maybe not the best. The 2 after that are looking very, very good. Down the bottom, though, for very difficult, you've got Manly having a bye, Melbourne Dogs, and then the Roosters. They've also got Canberra after that. So that looks pretty tough. And then the Knights and Parramatta are also down there. This is going to become very relevant when we look at centres, because I know people are looking at Lomax or maybe a Val Holmes this week. Really, none of their draws for the run home look that great. What I've actually got in the next screen is looking at the rest of the run home. And this is also sorted from easiest to worst. So Manly still come out as the worst for the rest of the year. So do the Knights. Surprisingly, so do the Roosters. So I know a lot of people are obviously looking at a Marky Mark this week. I think the beauty with him is that you can just play him on matchups, because they do have tough games. They've got Melbourne twice. They've got the Doggies in 24. But outside of that, they've also got the Finns. They've got Manly. They've got Para. They've got the Rabbitohs. There are some good matchups in there. The ones that look really good for the rest of the season, Warriors stand out. Apart from the Bulldogs, they've got a pretty soft run home, as do the Sharks. They've got a bye in 25, but outside of that, the run up until that bye is really, really good. And yeah, I'll tell you my decision on Hines versus Hughes, but yeah, I think I'm getting closer to that decision, and yeah, looking at the draw really helped me with that. Broncos looks good for the run home. They do play Melbourne twice, but the Broncos are also in a bit of an uptick themselves. And then Penrith round out that top four. So I won't go through all of the teams and read out the entire draw, but this is something that you can kind of refer back to for yourself. But what you'll see throughout the rest of the videos, anytime I show the draw, it's going to be in this similar order of going from easiest down to worst. So at least you'll be able to see with every section on the players, you've kind of got their draws ranked at the same time as well, just to make that maybe a little bit easier to keep referring to. But obviously, we now can probably have a good handle of the draw and who are the easy matchups and whatnot. So for me, easy matchups are, the Dragons, the Cowboys, the Titans, Parramatta to an extent, and then maybe the Tigers, and then maybe the Knights, because they are copping a few injuries and they could potentially slide down in terms of difficulty. While they've been pretty good so far this season defensively, and point scoring has been a problem, they could be a team that becomes a bit of an easier target as well for the rest of the year. So yeah, hopefully that is useful. As Toolpro says, the Broncos draw looks amazing. The Broncos draw for the run home is very good. People might be looking at pods, like a Reece Walsh at fullback. It helps as well looking at this in terms of like a Karapani. I bought Karapani a couple of weeks ago, like a majority of people, and I've always thought about, is he someone I can look to upgrade? But realistically, he could just be someone that is a perfectly good 6th or 7th center. You play in matchups, because they've got some really good matchups coming up, and there's still going to be important teams having buys at certain points throughout the year. Like you've got the Dolphins in 21, so you're going to be losing a Herbie Farnworth. You've got the Raiders again in 24. You're going to be losing a few players there. The Rabbitohs in 26, people might be jumping on more Latrells. So there are still some teams with buys in the future that will mean that having some good depth is good. And look, it's always good to have good depth. It's just going to be difficult with sit v starts. That's the main thing. So yeah, we'll try to go through a bit more through sit v starts as well in today's stream. So that's all I really wanted to talk about in terms of the run home draw wise. I do have a slide on this. I actually did a more dedicated post on this on Patreon, but just quickly going through this. This was looking at the team of the highest averaging players in the season so far to date. And I've made some exceptions for a few players like Connor Watson, Campbell, and Hughes, because I took out some of their injury-affected games. And effectively what I wanted to do was look at every single player averaging over 70 this season, just to see what are the positions that are really standing out. Very, very obvious here is center and fullback. You have lots of players averaging over 70. Averaging over 70. In particular, center wing and fullback, you've got plenty of guys averaging over 80 or pushing into the 80s as well. Like, you've got, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 guys in Karapani, Nwangani Tuasi, Garrick, Val, Lomax, who are all over 75 averaging. Then you've got Herbie and Karaz, who are already over 80. You can see the hooker is pretty miserable. You've only got Connor Watson at 71 if you take out his injury-affected game. Front row, you've only got really Haas and May really excelling. You don't really have anyone else. Second row, you do have a decent amount of options. Halfback, even Cleary in what you'd consider to be an underwhelming Supercoach year, he's still the best averaging halfback. This is why there was such a clamour to get him back either this week or the week after. 5'8" as well. Ezra Mann's actually the highest averaging. But again, if you look at historical averages, he's not normally someone who averages 76. So again, it defaults back to maybe a Munster or a Campbell. So yeah, I made a full post on this on Patreon. But what I wanted to get down to the bottom of was what's the ideal squad structure in terms of your reserves and things. So for me, it became pretty clear that I think 3 fullbacks I was always very set on, but yep, 3 fullbacks for sure. I think you definitely are going to want to have at least 5, if not 6 gun centers that you can play at least 1 or 2 of in your reserves every single week. Then I think you always probably want to still have a halfback reserve just because they do have those big ceilings. And then probably a second rower, because there's plenty of other good second rowers who are also in the low 70s averaging, and a couple who may get up to the mid 70s as well. So the way I thought about my updated squad structure for the run home is you definitely only need 1 gun hooker. I think you only really need 2 gun front rowers as well, in Haas and May. You don't even need a third reserve, to be honest. Second row, I think it's good to have maybe 4 gun second rowers, maybe a 5th one that you can maybe play in matchups, like maybe a Britton Nickera. But realistically, I think you want 3 guns and a 4th that you're happy to interchange maybe with a center, a halfback or 2 that you play every week, 1 gun 5'8", 5 or 6 gun centers, and then 3 gun fullbacks. I think that's around 20 players, and you probably want to be having a crop of 20, 21 really gun players that you pick on matchups. But again, it just means that I don't think you need to be wasting trades trying to get to 2 gun 5'8s or 2 gun hookers, even getting to a 3rd gun front rower. For me, it really feels like it's make sure you got the right centers, fullbacks, halfbacks, and second rows. Those are the 4 positions that really stand out for me. So the reason I wanted to mention that is because I've gotten some questions this week about, do I buy like a Val Holmes or do I buy like a Angus Crichton, for example? Now they're obviously 100k apart, but if you've got the duels to get the option of both, honestly my guess would be actually get someone like a Val, because he's averaging 75, which is similar to an Angus, but we always know with the run home, even though the Dragons have got a pretty tough run home, there's always going to be big blowout games occurring, especially in the latter rounds where some teams just pretty much give up and they're not looking forward to this year for the rest of the year. That's when you're more likely going to get those monster scores probably from your senders versus your second rowers. On the flip side, you could say, well, if I don't get Val, there's a plethora of other good centers that I could get as well. So it really comes down to balancing high upside points potential and offsetting that also with ownership. So we'll get into all that stuff, but yeah, hopefully that was maybe useful. So I ended that poll, but the first major talking point in terms of players was hooker. So, where's the poll results? Apologies. It's, hooker replacements was 39%. So let's jump onto there. So, honestly, this is going to be a pretty short segment, I think, for me in terms of which hookers to prioritize. As I just spoke about, I think you only need to get 1 gun hooker. Sandon Smith, I believe, is currently the most traded out player. I'm actually just going to quickly flick to that. Just give me a second. So yeah, Sandon Smith already has 7,000 trade outs as it currently stands. And the most popular trade of the week is Sandon Smith to Connor Watson. To keep it short and sweet, yes, I think Connor Watson is the best hooker that you can get. So obviously Harry Grant's been named in the reserves, so it makes him a bit of a tricky one for the rest of this week. Rest of the season though, draw-wise, Grant slightly comes about on top of Watson. As you can see, what I've got on the screen is draw ranked from best to worst. So Watson actually has the toughest, but for someone like Connor Watson, it probably doesn't really matter, right? He's a forward. He's got a season average of 67. If you take out that one game where he played, I think 30 minutes or 40 minutes and scored only 30 points, his season average is 71. Grant's season average is 59. And someone like a Harry Grant, there's a few matchups in there like Manly 20, Parramatta 22. I would be pretty scared to not own him, where I think, yes, he could go 100 plus. But Connor Watson also can get attacking stats. The negative with Connor Watson is that anytime there's an injury, he's the one who's most likely going to change his role. But I think if his role is going to be playing number 9 and some middle like 13, I think for what he's delivered for the entirety of the season, the consistency as well, I don't think he's really someone who I'd worry about arresting. Harry Grant, I do have a worry about arresting every now and then. Like we talk about round 26, where Melbourne might rest a lot of their gun players, let alone the fact that Grant might not even play this week. I just feel like if you are buying a hooker this week, Connor Watson makes the most sense to me. He's only 613k. He's got dual. He's only 26% owned in the top 5% as it currently stands. So it's not even like he's super highly owned. Sandon Smith, though, is the most popular hooker. So I imagine a lot of people are going Sandon Smith to Connor Watson. Grant will obviously be number 2. Third would probably be still maybe a Blake Brayley, just because of the quality of the draw. And we've seen him have an uptick in recent weeks. He's got a 5-round average of 69 and a really good draw up until round 25. He'd probably be third for me still. Api Coruscant might be fourth, just given that with no Talon De Silva, in games where he's played over 60 minutes this year, he has averaged about 63. So there has been an uptick in his average versus his season one when he doesn't have Talon De Silva. I've got Kurt Donahue here as well. The only downside with him is that he does have this bye come up in round 21. But if you're trying to go, again, don't know what your rank is. If you're trying to really go, a pod, someone like a Kurt Donahue, he's only 2% owned in higher ranked coaches, 5-round average of 69, and I don't think that's a fluke. He's generally been really good for them since he's been stepping into this new role. So again, if you don't love a Connor Watson and you want to go anti-pod him, I don't even mind a Kurt Donahue, but Connor Watson for me, yes, is the obvious one. And yes, Sandon Smith is also just an easy sell as well, just given the fact that he's completely dropped from that Roosters team. You've got Sam Walker back. I don't think there's any value in holding on to Sandon Smith unless you're someone who already owns Brayley, Watson, or Grant. I think if you already own one of those three and Sandon Smith is your backup, unless you feel like you can use his money, downgrade him to maybe a Kalani Going, who's probably the best enough you can get at hooker, who's second row forward and hooker dual, you don't need to sell Sandon Smith. Like I own Sandon Smith and I own Connor Watson. I'm probably just going to keep Sandon Smith because the way I look at it is the fact that he's dropped out of the team completely, he's not even going to lose money. And look, if there's any injury to Hugo Savala or Sam Walker, he'll come right back into that team and he'll be the goal kicker. And all of a sudden could be actually a useful hold. Who could be some depth as well, just in case there's any issue with Connor Watson down the track. So, that's my thought if you already own one of a Brayley, Watson, or Grant. Of course, if you don't own one of those three, and if your backups maybe if you're like in the Sandon Smith, Tom Starling combo, I think it's probably easy just to go to Sandon Smith to Connor Watson and just keep Starling as backup because the Raiders also do have a pretty soft run home as well. I'll just see if there's any questions around Sandon Smith or hookers. So what have we got from... So AJ says, trade Smith for Sam Walker because I'm a Roosters fan and love to see him back. You could. Sam Walker is he's definitely going to be a point of difference. Run is a little bit tough, but the Roosters are on a decent patch of form, albeit that loss to the Tigers was not great, which I was unfortunately there in the flesh to watch, which was very, very disappointing. Look, for me still, I think the fact that the Sharks have got such a good run, I still think Hines is above Sam Walker, and then I think Cleary is just also probably going to be the one who, if I see Cleary goal kicking tomorrow night, and if he gets named to play, I will be extremely tempted to just bring Cleary in straight up this week. So I just feel like Hines and Cleary are probably going to be the two that I'd be looking at, which probably gives away my answer as well of who would I keep out of Hughes or Hines. But we can get onto halfbacks in a bit more detail a bit later. So Lachlan's saying, if I've got Donahue already, do I need to rush Sandon to Watson? It doesn't affect my final team construction as your team value is great. Yeah, again, that's another instance where I think the fact that you've got one of the top hookers that I believe, so, the ones that I've presented on the screen here, you don't need to sell Kurt Donahue. You don't need to sell Sandon Smith. What you could do is just let it play out the next couple of weeks. What you can get is Kurt Donahue's got a good matchup in round 20 against the Cowboys. And then in round 21, when he's on the bye, sure, Connor Watson's got Melbourne, but you could just trade him, either Kurt Donahue, or you could just trade Sandon Smith at that point to Connor Watson. You don't need to make that decision right now. So that gives you some flexibility where you've got the next fortnight really to not have to worry about making your trade. And Connor Watson's break even is 57. Even if he goes really good the next couple of weeks, he might get up to 700k. So it's only going to be maybe another 70, 80k more than what he is currently. So it's not like he's going to go massively out of price. You're not chasing a massive negative break even either. Mildura is saying Wade Egan with the Warriors draw. So yeah, we spoke about it before. The Warriors do have a really, really good run home. Wade Egan did start the season very well also. He had, I think, 100 plus and an 86 in the first month of footy. Since then, though, he's only had one score over 60, where he scored 86 against the Knights in round 8. Apart from that, though, I'm just looking at it here. Lots of scores in the 50s and the 40s. So again, like he's cheap, he's 456k, and again, if you're looking for a point of difference and hoping you get some attacking stats, like he's not a bad option because he has gotten attacking stats. We saw plenty of that last year, getting all those tries, but I just feel like there's more examples of him this year going sub 60 than the big scores. So I feel like for maybe only 150k more, I would just feel more confident picking someone like a Brayley, Connor Watson. Maybe not Brayley, definitely a Connor Watson though, I think maybe over a Wade Egan. Again, this is the good thing with hooker. You can go a little bit different here and you're probably not going to get punished that badly. So again, it's not for me. I still think Connor Watson is the man I'd be going for. But if you're interested in a Wade Egan, I won't talk you out of it because a really good draw. And also we know that he's got an attacking stats. It's just he's had a lot of low scores or sub 60 scores this year. That would just make me a little bit nervous. That's all. But honestly, at the price of 456, I think you're paying value. So don't really knock it, but I can tell you right now that's probably not, it wouldn't be for me. I think I'd just go get Watson. Martin is saying a double nuff on hooker. Is that a decent option considering that we can just go back to the best 17? I wouldn't go double nuff at hooker. I still think that hooker is a position where if you can get 70 points out of a Connor Watson or Harry Grant every single week, those are still very, very valuable points. And you'd be giving up 70 points every single week, and you'd be having to rely on your hooker being the score that drops out every week. But I don't like that just because you might have weeks where, say your second rower or very popular center wing gets an early head knock and scores 15 points. Everyone else will have that score drop out most likely, but if you go double nuff at hooker, you're probably going to keep that 15 or you're going to get maybe only a 30 from your bench or something. So, I wouldn't be going double. I know hooker's crap, but I wouldn't be going double nuff. Reece Robson, again, similar to a Wade Egan, solid, probably won't let you down massively, but if I'm thinking anyone at the hooker position who can score big upside, for me, it's probably not a Reece Robson. They also have that buy in round 27, which is a little bit tricky. So, yeah, I think the fact that Connor Watson has no more buys for the rest of the year also makes it very appealing as well. And I don't think he's going to get rested. So, yeah, that's my take, I guess, on Robson. And, yeah, another reason why I'm keen on Connor. Nick is asking, is Talon De Silva worth a look if you're looking for a downgrade? Yeah, supposedly he's on some good money. I just think the fact that he's been named, I think he's been named on the bench this week. Riley Smith is also back. He's 215k, so he's very cheap, negative break even. I would just be a bit concerned that he might be a bit of an auto emergency nightmare. Like, sure, his minutes might step up to 40 to 50, potentially coming off the bench. But I'm having a quick look at some of his scores for the Tigers. Granted, he's only had 2 scores where he played over 40 minutes this year. One of them was for 25 points. Other was for 60, where he did score a try. So he had base of 29, base of 25. So I feel like even if he gets 40 to 50 minutes, he might only really score you as a floor 30 points, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but you have to also think of the situation where he might, fall into your team every now and then. If you really feel like you want depth and not have to have enough at hooker, then yes, he is probably the best downgrade you can get. Otherwise, I think, Kalani going is probably your best bet for a bottom dollar enough for hooker. All right, I think that's probably enough on the hooker position. Next up, we wanted to look at the center wing. So that was in the second most popular votes. So let's jump on to center wing. So just going to have a quick look again at trade-ins. For centers for trade-ins, we've got Marky Mark at 3rd, Lomax in 4th, Val in 9th. So there's plenty of, and Nick Meaney in 6th as well. So plenty of movement happening in the center position for trade-ins. So, one of the questions I got on social media was, would you pick Lomax or would you pick Val? Also, even just looking at that, if we're looking at my ideal run home centers, I have put this together and I put this also up on Patreon last week. For me, my top 6 gun centers is Herbie, Karaz, Lomax, Garrick, Marky Mark, and Val. I think those are probably the best 6 that you can get. And in terms of the averages, Val and Lomax are very, very close to each other. If I had to buy one of Marky Mark, Val, or Lomax this week, I would get Marky Mark just because he's got the lowest break even. I think his break even is -3. He's also got the best matchup this week. And he's back on the right wing, which I believe is the area for the Roosters team that has scored the most tries for them this year. We've seen in the last couple of years as well with Dom Young, that right wing spot is very, very profitable. So if you're buying one of them this week, I think for me it would be Marky Mark. assuming you've already got him, let's say you bought him last week, and if you're looking at specifically Val and Lomax, I've thought long and hard about this, and honestly, I haven't really come to much of a conclusion because their stats are very similar. Same averages, same 3-round, very similar 5-round. Lomax has slightly better base power of 54, Val's is 45. Both have pretty tough runs for the run home, like neither really have stellar matchups coming up. Especially with a Lomax without Mitch Moses. I'm not sure how good he's going to get. So yeah, it's really tough to decide between the two of them. I think I've thought about it more because originally I was saying get Lomax. And I've always in my head thought Lomax was a better, like a top 3 center, and maybe Val wasn't. But I don't know. That's my thoughts. Because I'm also thinking about the team. I think Parramatta will have a better end of year than I think the Dragons. But their draws are both pretty tough. I think if I was only buying one of them this week, I would get Val. And the reason I've defaulted to Val, despite what I just said about the Eels being better, is lower owned. He's only 12% owned in the top 5%. So and as you saw before, he's ranking below Lomax and Marky Mark for trade-ins this week for centre. And I just really love his matchup in round 21. He's got the Cowboys. So I think that's his first game against his old club. I love these narrative matchups. And I just think with Lomax, with Penrith, Canberra and the Broncos, then Melbourne, that next 4 is tough. Whereas at least with Val, Roosters at home, I'm not as scared of. Bulldogs away, yes. But even the Bulldogs, they've been leaking some points. And then it's the Cowboys, which I think is the prime matchup. And then it gets tough with Canberra, Sharks, Warriors. But for me, like if you're staggering the order that you buy them, I think I'd buy Val first. You get that Cowboys game earlier. And then with Lomax, you can kind of delay him until he gets Moses back. Look, they're both very, very good options. I already own Lomax, but I bought Lomax ages ago to try to target that matchup he had against the Titans. So I've already got him in my team. So it is what it is. But yeah, Val, if you didn't already own him or Lomax, I'd be very tempted with Val because he's got that lower ownership. And yeah, less of a trade-in option at the moment as well than Lomax. So yeah, that's the only way I can really try to justify Val over Lomax this week. Someone in the chat is saying Moses is due back next week. So that would mean that you get Moses back for Canberra. To be fair, someone mentioned it earlier, but Lomax has been averaging 75 and he scored, 2 tries all season long, which is stupid. Because, yeah, the man's work rate is, like, ridiculous. But I don't know. It's tough. I said Val. I'm going to stick with Val. Yeah. I think I'll stick with Val. I know there's something about Val as well that just makes me think he's got the potential for those big 130, 140s, even though the Dragons are a bit average at the moment. Someone also in the chat is saying, could you potentially antipod Dylan Lucas? You've got 93% ownership for Lucas. Look, I think the fact that he's so highly owned, he's got the dual. He's not someone I'll be actively looking to sell. Look, maybe around 22, if enough's enough, you can maybe pivot off at that point when he's got the buy. But I feel like at this point, he's shown too much already this year for me to feel like I need to move off of him. But yeah, see someone if you didn't already own, the fact that he's got 3 tough games and then a draw and then a bye, I don't think you need to rush in on Dylan Lucas. Now, Lachlan in the chat is also confusing me even more with this whole Lomax and Val thing because he's saying that Lomax versus Jed Stewart is a prime matchup next week. Absolutely, it would be a good matchup against Jed Stewart next week. Penrith, and the thing is, Penrith is also like that's like cold kind of Western Sydney derby and whatnot. Look, I'm saying Lomax because of low ownership and that Cowboys game in 21. But again, it's so close between these two. Like I'm just going to say that's where I'm landing. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But this is one of those ones where I'm going to say I'm going to defer to you guys to go with your own gut. I've given you my reasons why. The stats don't really tell you much of a picture apart from Lomax having a better work rate, which is good. But yeah, I just think I love the ownership of Val. Val at 12% is also just unreal. And this is me defaulting to saying Herbie, Carraz are absolute musts in my opinion. They've got very, very good draws for the run home in comparison to all of these other guys. Marky Mark, you can play in matchups, and I really like his matchup this week. with Garrick, people are thinking about maybe anti-potting him as well. Look, I don't think he'll be on the left wing forever. If he was on the left wing for the rest of the year, I'd say he's must own, because I think he's shown that he's been better scoring out the wing than at centre. I just feel like he's going to be someone who, come round 24, even if I don't play him in round 20 or 21 or even 23 for that matter, when they've got the Tigers, Dolphins, Dragons and Warriors, I'll want him. So he's just going to be someone I'll sit with in my team and I won't look to sell unless you've got a lot of trades in the bank. And if you want to move Garrick on to like a Lomax or Val Holmes this week, and then you can potentially buy back a Garrick in 24, that's an option for you maybe if you've got lots of trades. I also had Brian To'o on the screen, but I think with his injury doubt, it makes him a bit of a tricky option for this week. I know people are also looking at other pods in that Penrith team, like a Jenkins even, or a Casey McLean, just because their run is so good for the next 4. Again, if you're like a Garrick owner who's got the trades and really wants to try to make some aggressive moves, move off a Lucas, move off of a Garrick, free up money down to like a Casey McLean, or I'd actually prefer Jenkins. I just think being on the wing is better. Go to a Jenkins, get the next 4 to 5 weeks, and then from round 23, 24, when Penrith's run gets tougher, you can pivot back to a Garrick or pivot back to a Lucas if you want. I honestly don't hate that as a strategy, but it really needs you to be having, I think, at least, I'd say 13 trades, 12 to 13 trades before you can do strategies like that. But I don't hate it. I just feel like, again, I'm thinking with my own view. I only have 9 trades left now. I don't think I've got the luxuries to be bringing in guys like a Casey McLean or a Jenkins and whatnot to then flip again in the future. But if you've got that ability, I honestly really like that as a play, because a lot of these gun centers, as you can see, they don't have fantastic draws. Penrith are one of the only teams that do, though. So really trying to target that is not a bad option. And Jenkins, I like being that winger as well. So yeah, as Martin says, that To'o run home is very juicy if you can afford trades. Like, I'm concerned with To'o that he won't back up this week. Again, he could be a good option then for round 20. So again, if you want to defer deciding on a center and get To'o in instead of round 20, that's also an option. It'd be rude of me to not comment on Nick Meaney, given that he just scored 165. And I have to give a credit as well to Matrix from SC Ballers, who is currently ranked 9th. So again, definitely go check out their stuff, because they definitely know what they're talking about. He brought in Nick Meaney last week after hearing that Pappy was injured. Like, I can never do trades like that because I'm just not smart enough to do stuff like that. And he's got 165 points. Look, he's got a big negative break even, but he's back at center. Look, for a cash grab, I get it. You can get the matchups of, I don't even have it on screen here, apologies. You can get matchups of Knights, Manly, Roosters, and then Parramatta. So it's a really good 4-week play. And then round 23, you can pivot back to another gun center as well. It feels like something that you need to be able to have the trades for to do it. But if you're not liking any of those gun centers draws like Lomax or Val, get a Nick Meaney if you want. Ride that initial cash growth. And, one thing we don't know is if Pappy's going to get back the goal kicking. We just don't know. It could very easily be a case of where Meaney just keeps it. I would still think that Pappy gets it back. But look, it's not a bad play as well. But yeah, again, not for me, just because I probably don't have the trades to be able to do it. Wooden Spoon is saying, how many trades would you call lots? I'd say 13, 14 plus is probably a lot, because I'll quickly flick to this slide as well. So I've currently got 9 trades, and this is kind of how I've mapped it out about how I might be able to manage with it, which was maybe using 2 this week, 1 in 20, 1 in 21, and then using no more until 26, 27, where maybe I'd use 2 in both of those rounds, because I might think there's potential restings happening. So with someone having 9 trades, for me to manage, it relies on me having 4 weeks of no trades and 2 weeks of only 1 trade. So that's pretty skinny, because there could be injuries and stuff happening. So I feel like 9 is skinny. Any less, I'd be concerned. If you have like, say if you had 14 trades, that means you basically got, if you look at this similar map, but if you add in 2 more weeks where you can use 2 trades in both of them, plus another one in another round, that's what 14 trades would look like. So that actually probably gives you some flexibility to be a bit clever and anti-potting some guys like a Garrick or a Lucas while their draws are tough. So yeah, that'd be my call. I think if you had 13 or 14 plus. As Benergy says, trades are overrated. Yeah, but Benergy, you're very bold with your trade usage and whatnot. So I think that covered everything I wanted to speak about on the gun centers. Hopefully that was good for all of you. Someone did ask Brimson. My only concern with Brimson is just with Keanu Keeney looking like he might be back in round 21. We just don't know what's going to happen with that back line. And I'm going to have a quick look at it here as well. If we look at the Titans draw, you get Broncos and West Tigers maybe at fullback. Then you get into Warriors, Penrith, Rabbitohs, which is fine. Sharks, Warriors again, Dolphins, Tigers. It's an okay draw, nothing amazing. I'm just concerned that Brimson might not get that fullback jersey for that much longer. And let's say if he goes back to 6, his scoring at 6 wasn't amazing to begin the year. I'm just going to rattle off his scores at 6, 40, 24, 63, 58, 73, 46, 52, 30, 102, and 54. It was a bit up and down. For 600k, I would rather just, again, pay 80, 90k more, and you can get to Val, get to Lomax, get to Mark, who I'm way more comfortable with just as an option. So, yeah, not for me, I think. Alrighty, let's get into the next topic, which, apart from center, let me have a quick look, was second row. So let's talk about second rowers, because of course people are looking at maybe selling the likes of a Tarpany this week. So if I go to trade outs for this round, yeah, number 5 most traded out is Corey Horsburgh, number 7 is Hosking, number 8 is Tarpany. I do think all of those guys are very fair trade outs. Obviously they're on the bye this week. And they're probably going to have, at least Horsburgh and Tarpany, I would suspect, are still going to have their minutes managed just in this run home, just so that the Raiders can make sure that they're fit and firing for the finals, given that they're in a very, very good position to make a good crack at it this year. So I think, yeah, 520k, 570k, and 593k. So they're all kind of around this mid to high 500k range. So, sorry, I'll flick back here. In terms of the people are looking at getting, Angus Crichton is currently the most traded in second row forward at number 7. And he's the only one at the moment. I'll also quickly show you trade-ins for the top 5% for second row specifically. And if you don't have SC+, it's a good reason to get it, just to look at things like this. Otherwise, you can see me doing it as well. So if you look at round ownership change for second rowers, Angus Crichton is currently the most popular, behind Connor Watson, but that's because most people are getting him at hooker. You then get Kalani going. Then you have Kickow, Naf White. You still have Kane Bradley, Miles Martin, Kurt Donahue, Nikora, Aaron Clark, Eli Katoa. But they're very, very lowly traded in as it currently stands. So really, apart from maybe Angus and Kickow, not really many other second rowers of note, I think, getting traded in. So I guess the question is obviously who's the run home second row forwards that you'd be looking at. Kolomatangi, I think, is going to be there. I know he's had a slight dip in the last few weeks. He's got a 3-round average of 63, but I think we've seen enough of him in the middle to know that he's almost a set and forget. 95% owned in top ranks. Eli Katoa, 98% owned in top ranks. Those two guys are always just going to feature, I think, in your second row forward. So really, I think it comes down to filling 2 more spots. If we think back to my kind of run home ideal structure, I said maybe getting 4 gun second rowers. You can maybe push to 5. But let's say it's 4 for the time being. So Hudson Young's not a consideration at the moment anyway, just because he's on the bye. And I'm just a little bit concerned with this osteitis pubis that he has, how that might affect his performance. So for me at the moment, he's just not someone I'm worrying about. He's got 115 break even as well. So, when he comes back maybe in round 2021, that's when we'll maybe reevaluate Hudson Young, but not someone I'm looking at for this week. If you're looking at for this week, you've got Aaron Clark, you've got maybe Isaiah Yeo, you've got Kickout, you've got Preston, you've got Angus, and then 3 other guys I wanted to call out as well is Jack Williams, Britton Nikora, and Pat Carrigan. Look, I'm going to just say it out loud, even though I don't think his numbers are bad at all, but I'm going to rule out Pat Carrigan. I just think his numbers are good. I just don't think he excites me. So I'm going to be very biased with him. He's not someone I'll be considering. And he also has a buy in round 20. So again, not someone that I'll be looking at for a trade in this week. Very much last week, I was on the kick out over Preston. So I'm going to rule out Preston as well. So that leaves all the other guys. I do think that best value is going to be Angus Crichton. So he's 584k, 3-round average of 70. We've seen a bit of an uptick in base power the last 2 games in particular with 66 and 76. And he should be getting Sam Walker back now as well. I don't know if Sam Walker will play on his edge, but I'm just thinking Hugo would play on the right, I imagine. Just going to quickly double check team lists just to see what number Sam Walker was named at. Give me 1 second. Hugo Savala at 6, Sam Walker 7. Okay, so Hugo Savala is probably going to be playing more on the left. That maybe isn't as good for an Angus because I think he would have benefited of having a Sam Walker on his edge. But I still think Angus is really good. We saw how good he was last year. 6% ownership. Isaiah Yeo, I know some people are looking at him versus Angus. I do prefer Angus. I think Angus just has more upside than Isaiah Yeo. And I think Isaiah Yeo, without Luai this year, he's had a bit more of a playmaking role. And therefore, I think his work rate has, in general, just been a bit down. Last week, or the last time he played, was 67 and 60 base power. But a season average base power of 59. In seasons gone past, he would normally be like a mid-60s. So I think the fact that his work rate's gone down a bit more, the draw is good, so there might be more attacking stats. I just feel like he's not someone who's normally I'd be looking at as someone to get attacking stats. So I'm going to rule out Isaiah Yeo as well. We'll keep Angus in the consideration there. With Kickout, he does feel like someone who still has a very good run the next few games, but I think if you didn't trade him in already, the fact that he's gone up to 668k, I don't know if I'd be looking at still. I'd be more tempted by maybe some other cheaper guys. Or maybe going a bit against the grain because he's 38% owned now as well. Maybe trying to find an edge and get someone a little bit different. Like say an Aaron Clark. Like I think if you didn't have a kick out by now, I'd actually get Aaron Clark, I think, over him. He's only $2,000 extra. Average for the season is a little bit less, but he's way more consistent in my opinion. You know, base power the last 3 weeks of 66, 79, and 64. And we know that with a very, very good run home for the Warriors. He's also gotten attacking stats this year as well. So I'd almost be very tempted to take an Aaron Clark over Kickout. The only reason I went and got Kickout last week was to get numbers for round 18. And then a couple of other point of difference players is Jack Williams. He's got a 5-round average of 75. He's 594k. And his base power the last 3 weeks has been 62, 65, and 78. And that's even extended beyond that as well, because the 2 rounds before that, I think he had like 71, 72 in base power. So he's going to be an absolute point of difference. He's only 1% owned in higher ranks and has been punching out really, really solid numbers. So again, if you're looking for a point of difference who's not going to let you down, maybe lacks a bit of upside, Jack Williams is probably for you. I think if I was getting mid-600s second rower though, as my fourth, Britton Nicker I think would be the one I'd be getting though. I think if I had to think about my best 4 or 5 second rowers right now, Kolomatangi, I'm going to exclude Hudson Young for the time being. I'd say Kolomatangi, Eli Katoa. I'm going to say Aaron Clark, maybe Kickout / Angus, and then maybe Britton Nickera. Just what I like about Britton Nickera is he's a bit expensive at 650, but his base has been up the last 3 weeks of base power of 65, 65, 51. And his draw up until round 25 is unreal. I can definitely see him getting some big tons in the next few weeks. And I think if that's what you're trying to chase in the run home, I think he's the one who I would have the... excuse me. I think he's the one who I'd have the most confidence in doing that. So I think if you're really trying to chase a bit of a point of difference at second row, I think Britton Nicker is actually the way I'd be going. You obviously need to cop that he's going to get some lower scores, but he's only 17% owned by higher ranks. So again, pretty low owned when you think about it. Like if you haven't owned Kickout, I'd go get Nicker instead. I think he's got a better draw, work rate's a little bit up, and I think the Sharks will have to turn it around. So yeah, I think I'd be taking a Britton Nicker. And yeah, just comment in the chat is saying you probably missed the boat on a Kickout. I kind of agree with that to an extent as well. And yeah, Angus at the price looks very, very tempting at 584k as well. So again, let's see him get through Origin, but it's a good matchup against the Dragons and his price is ridiculous. So I think to sum all that up, if I was ranking trade-ins at second row for this week, it would probably be, I'm going to say Angus, Aaron Clark, Nickera, Kickout, Jack Williams. That's kind of my 5 second row forwards that I'll be trading in this week. And yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that, because hopefully that is good enough for all of you. And yeah, look, Hudson Young could feature into that, but he's just not an option for me in round 19, and then round 20 as well. I'm just a bit concerned about this osteitis pubis issue that he's been managing. So I'm just going to see if there's any other questions on second row. So Tulpro is asking, is Joe Tarpany a sell? I'm going to loop him into this conversation just because I imagine people have got the deals to go Tarpany out to a second rower. You can absolutely sell Joe Tarpany. I don't have a specific slide on front rowers, but if you just look at Tarpany, his scores have been very disappointing for a while now. I pretty much traded him in at max value at 730k. Since then, I've gotten a 77, 58, 59, 55, 81, 62, 46. And the minutes have all been over 50 generally. There's a couple of games with 43, but only 29 minutes last week. He's got a highish break even. He's just not someone who I think I'll be interested in keeping for the run home, because he still has another bye as well, coming up in round 24. His minutes could definitely continually get managed as well. Like, it sucks that he's dropped so much in cash at 593k, but I think if you can afford to sell Tarpany and you can get a gun second rower, I'd much prefer getting in the second rower. So yeah, you can absolutely sell Tarpany this week. And yeah, with Hosking, Lachlan makes a good point here as well, that Manny Nicholson will eventually come back into this Raiders team as well. And again, he's someone who, like, if you're a Hosking owner, Hosking might drop back to the bench. They might also manage the minutes of a Horsburgh, Hudson Young, Joe Tarpany, because they might want to get more minutes into a Manny Nicholson to get him kind of back up to speed by the time finals hits. So again, just another reason I think you can sell a bunch of these Raiders forwards. Jason is asking, Tarpany or Hosking to Clark or Angus? I think I've kind of answered that in terms of Angus. I'd probably take Angus over Clark. Again, he's about 100k cheaper. We know the pedigree as well, and he's way more of a pod, which is very, very tempting. If I'm selling Tarpany or Hosking, I think I would sell... I sell Hosking, just because I think down the track, as Lachlan says, he'll be more of an eventual sell. Tarpany he can sit there, be a third front rower as a depth cover, but you never play him. Whereas Hosking, I think eventually you're never really going to want to play Hosking. So I think I'd probably lean towards selling Hosking to Angus. What about Tino? So the reason I didn't put Tino on this slide is I figure that most people already own him. Otherwise, if you've sold him, I think you've just in the position where you can just wait and see how he goes. And if it looks like he's getting better from that sternum issue in the coming weeks, then he can be a trade-in at that point. And at that point, he could be a very good trade-in because he's going to be really cheap, because he's already about, 573k. So yeah, in terms of squad makeup, I've got Tino, I think, at the moment in my 5th second row forward spot. So again, I'm not sure if I'll need to do a trade-in for a second rower this week, just because my second row is already looking pretty good. But I do have Tarpany, who I'm kind of keen to get rid of, but yeah, I don't know. Might have to exercise some patience. And you can always defer these decisions for the coming rounds as well. You don't need to get in someone in this week. Just comment saying 2 or 3 gun front rowers for the run home. I answered it before. I think 2 is how I'd be looking at it. You can get a third decent one as depth, maybe like a Naf White if you still got him, or maybe Tino. What's my rank? 2226. I think that's what it is at the moment. Odie's asking, would you hold Olukwatu or sell? Was hoping he'd be a pod and save me a trade. If I sell, I'd go to Isaiah Yeo for a pod. Had Nikra since the start. Thoughts? I'm not sure when Olukwatu is back, but I think with Manly having a pretty tough run home, excuse me, I think I'd still sell. He's 660k, so you don't have to spend much money to move him on to like a Clark. You make money going to an Angus. And because he's coming back from a dislocated shoulder, again, it's one of those ones where I feel like, is he going to really be at peak performance when he comes back? Probably not. So yeah, I'd be happy to sell Olukwatu if I were you. David saying a second row forward or Marky Mark this week. I think if you didn't have, it'd be Marky Mark. He's got the negative break even. Finally, let's take a quick look at halves. Obviously, with Cleary being named in the reserves, it does make things a little bit tricky about whether you want him or not this week. Now, I do think that if you can get him, Cleary is the best halfback to own. We spoke about it before. His season average is 76. I think someone in the chat also said that if you take out his injury-affected game, he's averaging over 80. Hughes is averaging 68. Un-injury affected, I think it's about 72. And Hines is averaging 70. Now, if I'm selling one of Hughes or Hines for Cleary, I think I've kind of made my mind up that I'd be selling Hughes instead. Main reason is I think that Hughes is due a rest at some point. The run home from 24 onwards isn't the best. And he's a bit more volatile. Like, he's got the low scores. He does have the big scores in him as well. But Hines just has a very good floor. Like, even in bad weeks, he scores about 62. Round 21 to 24, Rabbitohs, Cowboys, Dragons, Titans is almost the best 4 matchups you can ask for. And I think not owning Hines, if the Sharks have turned it around in that period of time, it'll be very, very tough to not own him. With Hughes, on any given week, it could be Munster, it could be Grant, it could be Pappy. It's not always a guarantee that Hughes will do well, even if the Storm do well. But if the Sharks are doing well, it's more likely that Hines is going to be doing well. So I think I've kind of made my mind up in that I think I will sell Hughes for Cleary if I want to get Cleary back in my halves. There's an option as well that you could also maybe sell one of your fullbacks if you're moving off of Pappy, but I think the fact that Pappy's named, I'm not sure if I'd be selling Pappy. And you run 3-gun halfbacks for a period of time. But yeah, for me, it's clear. I want Cleary, and I think Hughes will be the one who I eventually sell. On 5/8s, look, I don't know if I'm in the position to comment on KO weeks. Look, thank God he's on a bye this week, so I don't need to worry about having to say, is he a trade-in or not? So we'll leave any commentary on KO weeks for this week. On the 5/8s, you've got Munster, Campbell, Ezra Mam, and Matt Burton. Now, Ezra Mam has been the best averaging 5/8 this year so far. Campbell, without an injury, is about 71. Now, a question I wanted to cover off was, if you're a Munster and King Tongia owner, which I am, do you sell Munster this week if he doesn't play? Or do you just maybe cop King Tongia? Or do you even upgrade a King Tongia to someone like a Jaden Campbell maybe, because he's pretty cheap at 564? I haven't 100% made my mind up on this. At the moment, I'm leaning towards just copying King Tongia, just because of the flex. He could just drop out of my score this week. And prior to last week, he was having a few decent games scoring-wise. So I just don't really want to use too many trades at 5/8, which is why I'm thinking I might just hold on to Munster and, just cop King Tongia to score. Now, if I had to choose my 1/5/8 for the run home, I actually don't think it would be Munster. Again, as I spoke before, I feel like Melbourne are going to be in this position where they might rest their guns in round 26. I think they're going to have games where they're kind of just cruising, where they can just take the win. They don't need to push it and kind of ramp up for finals when finals hits. Whereas someone like a Jaden Campbell, I think his overall draw is better. And the Titans don't know any other way except scoring points and leaking points. So I think if I didn't have one on Munster or Campbell, given the price as well, I think I'd probably take Campbell. Ezra Mam, I think, is like the second most traded in player this week. Number 2. So I don't know who people are selling. I assume people are maybe selling a Metcalf. Yeah, Luke Metcalf is the second most common trade of Metcalf to Ezra Mam, and also King Tongia to Ezra Mam. Again, just with King Tongia to Ezra Mam, you just want to be careful with your squad structure. I don't know how much it's worth putting money into 5/8. If obviously you've got heaps of cash and you're trying to cover a Cam Munster this week and you're happy to go King Tongia to Ezra Mam, it's probably the best play because Ezra Mam's got the Titans this week. And then outside of the buy in round 20, he's also got Parramatta. And Ezra Mam does look really, really good. If you have any doubts about Ezra Mam, it also depends on what the impact of Ben Hunt will be in the squad. We know that could potentially impact a Reece Walsh SuperCoach points-wise. I wonder if that also hurts Ezra Mam, but we just haven't seen it yet this year of Ezra Mam playing with Ben Hunt. So I think don't also discount Matt Burton. I know he didn't score amazing, but he does have the Cowboys this week and then the Dragons. It generally has a pretty good run up until round 22. But I understand the appeal of if you're trying to upgrade King Tongia to Ezra Mam just to get the coverage this week. Yeah, Mam's probably the play, just given the Titans matchup. Odie says, absolute legend, love you here. Aman, thoughts on Metcalf to Ezra? I think we've kind of spoken about that. Like, I think I've always been not that keen on Ezra Mam just in terms of what he's done Supercoach-wise, but I can't deny his scores. His scores have been very good so far. And he's not a high base stat player, so there's no point even bringing up his base stats. He's just getting a bunch of attacking stats. Apart from the 41 against Manly in round 13, 128, 58, 64, 70, 95. I can't really ignore those scores, and it's a really good matchup this week as well. So if you're selling Metcalf and you're happy to ride out as a bit of a point of difference as well, because the most common owned 5/8s are Munster and Campbell at 66 and 48%. Again, 5/8 is similar to hooker, one of those positions where I don't think you're going to get massively hurt. So if you want to go a bit of a point of difference, I think it's fine. And Ezra Mam's only 7% owned, so I think he's actually not a bad shout. So yeah, I'm going to slightly change my stance on him. I don't know if that means I'll trade him in. But yes, I think Ezra Mam, I'm looking more and more at the scores, and I'm finding it harder to ignore, put it that way. Duncan makes a good point here about the Hughes over Hines. The comp will be won on the 100 plus scores, not the consistent 60s. I get that, but the thing is, Hines is also, even though we haven't seen it for ages, he is also capable of big 100 plus scores himself. And I feel like the weeks that he's most likely going to do that will be rounds 21 to 24. So yeah, that's the reason why I'm just more leaning towards keeping Hines and maybe selling a Jerome Hughes. It also helps me money wise because Hughes is a bit more expensive than Nico. OD says Mam has never been good SC wise, lots of attack. Better off going with the Tanner Boyd. Good job security, cheaper, play on the matchups. Again, I don't hate that. It probably works better for your squad structure to have someone like a Tanner Boyd because he's only 329k. I'd love to know if he was goal kicking before the round starts, because we've spoken about the Warriors run home. It's really, really good. And if he has that halfback jersey, if we just assume that he's kind of similar to Luke Metcalf was doing very well SuperCoach wise. So Tanner Boyd could be an option. I like the fact that he's cheap at 329k. And yeah, it fits your overall squad structure a little bit better. But I think that if you're looking for a trade in this week, I'd get Ezra Mam. I know historically he's not a SuperCoach point gun, but he's in good form, and the Titans are the Titans, and it's a good matchup this week. And even outside of that, it's Parramatta in 21 and then the Rabbitohs in 22. And then you can always just reassess in round 23. Again, if you've got a few trades to play around with, maybe Ezra is a better option for you. All right. Due to Pappy being named, I thought we might speak a bit more about fullbacks, but I might reserve this chat just because due to time for maybe post-Origin, because maybe I want to know what happens with Cleary around someone like a Dylan Edwards, who probably looks the most enticing fullback draw-wise for the next few weeks, just given how good the Penrith run is. I think the fact that Pappy's been named as well is a good sign, and it's a good run up until about round 22. Pappy's form has been down. If you look at the 5-round average of 57, it's obviously nowhere near on par with what he's averaging for the season of 83. So I've kind of flipped my thinking in terms of my three fullbacks. I was originally thinking of maybe moving on to Drinkwater, but if Pappy continues to disappoint, then I can see Pappy being the one that I move off on. But if he keeps the goal kicking, I still find it hard to move off on him just because we know what ceiling he has. And you even saw it last week. Nick Meaney at fullback, 165 points. So I'll reserve the fullback chat for now, just because I want to see Origin as well. But I'll talk about this in my final thoughts video. I just wanted to go a bit faster just due to the time constraints. And I think the fact that Pappy's been named, so many people are trading him out. I think that number is going to reduce. He's not even in the top 10 trade-ins anymore. Trade outs, I should say. And there's no fullbacks as well in the top 10 trade-ins. So might just leave it for there on the fullback chat. But yeah, definitely will be a consideration about that third spot. Going to quickly take a look at matchups and captaincy, and then we'll probably wrap up the stream there. So matchups for round 19. So this is thanks to NRL Tryline, which is, I have to give credit to the Whisperer because he mentioned this to me on Sunday. Very, very good website, which I'll actually put the link for in the chat as well, just so you guys have it. So this is similar to the SC Guns try map. It basically shows you where teams are scoring and conceding tries, which is very, very useful. And I'm going to try to I'm going to show this every week if I can, just because matchups are going to become really, really important just for our sit v starts and whatnot. So yeah, for me, I will definitely be paying much more attention to this as we as we go for the run home. So a few matchups I wanted to call out for this week. Give me a second. I need some water, otherwise my throat is gonna it's gonna go on me. So what stands out for this week? Penrith wings. So Eels have conceded the most number of tries on their wings, 15 to left wingers, 12 to right wingers. So that looks really enticing for Penrith wingers. Again, is why someone like a Jenkins is a bit of a point of difference. Well, I say a bit of a point of difference. He'd be a massive point of difference. Bulldogs left edge. So again, if you're thinking of a second row forward trade in for this week, it looks good for them against the Cowboys. So kick out could actually still be a good option for this week. Sorry, I was just having to put my charger in. Apologies. Broncos left edge, wings, and fullback. So again, the Ezra Man looks really enticing. And also Karapani. I definitely think if you can, play Karapani this week. Fullback also looks good if you're a Reece Walsh owner. Roosters right wing and fullback. Lots of points conceded by the Dragons to these positions. So again, Marky Mark, Teddy look really appealing. Warriors left wing, not really relevant, but maybe a two of us to check. Then you've got Dragons right wing and fullback. So maybe Gutherson, but I don't think that's overly Supercoach relevant. Melbourne prop and right wing. That might just help maybe for someone like a Pappy through the middle and also cutting out to the right-hand side player. Also still maybe good for a Jerome Hughes. The Knights left edge. So Melbourne have been leaky on that side. So Greg Marzu, Bradman Best, who we didn't even speak about Bradman Best, but he's also been averaging over 70 this year. Could be a nice little point of difference play as well. Because Storm have been conceding a lot of points to opposing left wingers and left centres. The Titans wings and props. So maybe Tino might be a good play this week. Tigers left wing, probably not very relevant. Dolphins left centre and right wing. So I know most people already own a Herbie Farnworth, but just wanted to call it out because the Sharks have conceded 11 tries to opposing left centres. So that looks really, really appealing for someone like a Herbie. Cowboys wings. So this looks good for Drinkwater. Even though the Bulldogs is a tough matchup, they've conceded a fair few amount of tries on their wings. So that could be good for a Drinky. Eels left wing. So Penrith, more of their tries have been conceded to the left wing. Not many at all to the right wing, only 6. So maybe matchup-wise doesn't look as good for Lomax. Maybe it's better to go someone like a Val this week. And then you've got the Sharks left centre and right wing. So I don't think many people are going to be owning a Talakai or a Sione Katoa, but there's a potential matchup play there as well. Just comments asking, sit v start is difficult, Shiba or Karapani versus Titans? I think I'd just take Karapani. As you can see here, the Titans have conceded more tries to the, to the winger than the centre. Yeah, I think I'd play Karapani this week, and Shibasaki is also backing up as well from Origin. A quick look at captaincy, and then we'll wrap things up. It feels a bit like a tricky week because you might have the ability to do a VC loophole if you're really short on numbers this round, which in the situation, if you had decent coverage, if you had the ability to do an easy VC loop, my advice would be VC Tedesco versus the Dragons, who, as we just pointed out before, they've conceded a lot of tries to opposing fullbacks. And then I'd go captaincy either on like maybe a Terrell May to be safe. If you're confident in Payne Haas and him backing up, you could go Captain Payne Haas. Otherwise, I think Terrell May is a safe one. The Warriors have been okay at defending front rowers, but nothing amazing. But yeah, otherwise, I think if you've got the ability to do a good VC loop, VC Teddy, Captain Terrell May feels pretty safe. If you can't do an easy loop this week, I think it's fine to just go straight captain on Teddy. I know, look, we call it disappointing. He still walked away with 77 points. I think the fact that the Roosters are getting their Origin players back and the Dragons just playing how they are, I think, and looking at the matchup stats, who did the Dragons play last week? They played the Raiders, yeah, and KO Weeks. He just went and scored 160 against them. So there is a weakness against fullbacks. So yeah, I think I'm just going to default to Teddy captain. If we see Nathan Cleary goal kicking and I want to trade him in, I will probably go Teddy VC captain Cleary. I haven't put Pappenhausen on the screen just because I wasn't sure if he was going to get named. Since he's been named, Martin Lau saying it here, VC Paps captain Teddy. I think that's probably where I'm going to default to as well. The fact that Pappenhausen has been named, it's the Knights who are losing a few players. And if we get confirmation, hopefully on Pappy goal kicking, I think I'll be very comfortable with the VC Pappy captain Teddy play, I think, for this week. Pod shouts could be Ezra Mann. That Titans matchup looks really good for the Broncos. So Reece Walsh, Ezra Mann, Payne Haas could be your pod options. Apart from that, though, there's not a whole heap that stands out. Drinkwater could be an option. Playing at home, we know his average with Clifford is very good, but it still doesn't feel great going against the Bulldogs. It's why I think I'm most likely, going to default to Captain Tedesco. So that's all I wanted to talk about for today's video. I'm just going to quickly look at, in terms of my team, honestly, I don't even know what trades I've been looking at. It's been a pretty busy day. So I'm not sure what I'll be doing for trades at this point in time. I've got Sandon Smith, I've got Tarpany, who I might want to move on. So my trades might revolve around them, but I do want to see, the origin players that I'm looking at. It's Angus, it's Cleary, it's Val. Those are the three main ones. So I kind of want to see how they all just come out of the game. And then I'll probably decide if there's a way that I can move to one of them. But yeah, otherwise my own team itself is looking pretty good. You can check out me on Patreon. That's where I'll post more dedicated team videos probably for the rest of the season. But I will probably, where I possibly can, still do the final thoughts videos, especially this week, given that there'll be the Origin game happening as well. But thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm just going to leave it there. My voice is also starting to hurt, but went through plenty. Hopefully you all enjoyed that one. We'll see you all in the next one. Up the Blues. Hopefully a Blues win tomorrow night in Sydney. And I definitely won't be wearing this maroon jumper again, I can tell you that much. But yeah, up the Blues. Hopefully you all enjoy your State of Origin tomorrow, and we'll see you again probably later in the week for a final thoughts video. Catch you all and have a good one.